digital ID rollout. Now, this is one of the most requested and talked about topics we've been asked to cover. So, first, let me introduce myself. If this is your first time you've attended one of our presentations, because I can see there's a lot of new members who've joined, so welcome. My name is Simone, and I'm the head of the Advocates Network and Testimonials Department. Now, there's going to be a lot of information that's going to be shared today. And well, for our regulars, I think you know what I'm going to ask. But can you see me and can you hear me? And although I say, can you hear me? Can you lip read if you can hear me? So either on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, there's a panel. There is a square with a arrow. If you just click on that, it will then expand. And just say, yes, you can see me and hear me, and that's all great. And of course, that's where also you can pop your question in throughout the presentation as well. And of course, time permitting, we will ask your questions. Now, also on your panel, you see different options, and one of them will either say handouts or materials. As you can see, there are 8 handouts there, which you can download right now. But if for some reason you can't, please do not panic, because anyone who's on this live presentation, I will get those handouts emailed to you ASAP. But as I said, you can download them right now. Also, we will be doing polls. Now, this is actually a popular point in all previous presentations that we've done, because I think people love to see what other people have been voting for as well, and we share those results. Now, just bear in mind, and very important to note, your name will not be published. So anyone on here today, whatever you vote for, no one will see your name. So I just wanted to make a point of that. Now, as I mentioned about the live chat where you can pop your questions in there, talking about questions, thank you for those who have submitted their questions anyway. Time permitting, as I said, we will go through those questions. However, you may find they may be answered during the presentation as well. And we will only be answering questions relating to today's topic as well. This webinar is recorded and it will be uploaded to the members platform in the next few days if you want to go back and go through these details again. So, are we ready? Pen and paper at the ready? Let me introduce you to our speaker. He is the founder and the president of the Republic of Old Souls. It's Ian Clifford. Good morning. How are you today?
Yeah, good day. It's a good day today. I'm interested in hopefully providing a remedy to this problem that is not just in isolation. It's coming in all around the world, and it is. If you're not aware of what's going on with this, it's very, very clear indication of the cabal tightening their grip on the control agenda. As David Icke's been saying for 35 years, there's a totalitarian tiptoe going on, and this is one of the steps in that totalitarian tiptoe. They don't bring everything in one go. They do little steps along the journey, and they test the water, and they try and get a reaction before they roll out anything significant. And mostly, sadly, they get compliance. But before we get into all of the subjects and the contents, I just want to really set the scene for this. I think a lot of people on the webinar will be of a belief that if the cabal want to do something, that there's not much you can do to avoid it and solve the problem for yourself. Because that's what the programming tells. It tells us all, that once the government, the state, the crown, the cabal want to do something, there's not much you can do. You can protest, you can argue, you can lobby your politician, you can, you can object, you can get involved in petitions, you can do all manner of things. But ultimately, those things generally don't work. And that leaves people feeling a little bit hopeless. It's like, what can little me do against the might of the cabal, which is, for those who've been on my webinars before, you'll know that this is not just a country by country control agenda. This is a worldwide control agenda that's being rolled out to a plan. It's not random. There's nothing random going on. Somebody very well known once said the world is a stage, and this is definitely like a theatre that we're watching unfolding in front of our eyes. But I'm going to give everyone something to smile about, because there's always a solution to every problem. Just as there is light and dark and up and down and left and right, if there's one, there's got to be the other. And there always is a solution to every problem, even though it may not appear obvious, and it may not be that everybody's talking about a solution to this problem. Hopefully by the end of the webinar, you'll realize that there is a solution to this problem. And it is actually, and you may think this is a strange comment for me to say, but this problem that we're all facing is actually a massive opportunity to realize things that we probably don't know about, which I'm going to talk about on this webinar, that are going to enable you actually to benefit from the problem. So if the problem is the cause of you to look into what can you do about the problem, is there a solution, then, as strange as it may sound, when you get problems, you also get the solutions delivered within the package. You've just got to find them. Some people find it difficult to find the solutions. It's what I've been known for many years. If there's a complex problem, how do you solve it? And that's what I like to do. So hopefully during this webinar, I'm going to show you how to solve this problem, because it is a bit complex and it is a bit difficult, but there is always a solution. And that's what I'm going to walk you through today. And that's the roadmap we've got here. I'm not going to go into everything in great detail, because I often find that if you do too much detail, it gets lost. So as you say, Sims, most of the audience probably retain 20% of what I'm going to present. So I need to keep it high level. If you are interested in more detail, we've got the handouts. If you like reading, there's also videos that you can watch. And there's also lots of other webinars that I've presented that go into individual subjects in more detail. Somebody else very famous once said, that knowledge is power. And I absolutely believe that too. So without further ado, let's move into the next slide, please. Now on this slide, I'm going to set the scene for how we've all been deceived. You actually have in your handout, you've got an ebook that I wrote, I think it was a couple of months ago now. I started to do lots of interviews, and I've been interviewed by some fairly high profile interviewers, and there's more to come. And I started to talk about the Monopoly board, because that's, I think, a very good way of explaining what's really going on in the world of commerce. I think everybody knows what Monopoly is, and many of us have played it. But most of us probably don't realise, I do obviously, because it's a subject I've immersed myself in, that the game of Monopoly is actually being played out everywhere, all across the world. And it's not a board game. It is the game of commerce that we are deceived to play without realising what the rules are. Nobody tells us the rules, and everybody around us kind of plays the game the same way. And that doesn't mean that everybody's playing it with knowledge and power. It just means that everybody is following what they've learned from others. It could be their mum and dad taught them how to play the game of Monopoly. It could be the first job. It could be the teachers. It could be whoever it is that we all listened to when we were growing up. So in order to make this a little bit more colourful and to make it perhaps more easy to get a comprehension of, I'm going to tell a story. And the story goes like this. So you won't remember this. Well, I think it's unlikely you will. But your mum and dad brought you into this world as probably a screaming baby at some point, because I think we all did that when we were babies. And they were coerced by the crown or the state or the cabal, depending on where you are. It's all kind of the same thing. That they had to register the baby into the system. You had to get this birth certificate. And if you didn't, there was all sorts of leverage and persuasion being exerted. And nearly everybody I've ever met will tell you, if you ask them, did you register your baby or babies when they were born into the system, into the registration system? And very often you'll find that everybody you talk to says, well, of course I did it. You had to. It was kind of, that's the way it is. You can't really avoid it. Very often that is the reaction you get. Seldom do you get somebody saying, you know what, I actually 100% knew what was going on with that and I avoided it like the plague. That's very, very rare that you hear that reaction. So it's common practice to register the baby into a registration system. But if you are a mum or dad and you've done that with your offspring, or you've asked your mum and dad, why did they do that? If that subject's ever come up, they probably don't really know, as you probably don't really know, unless you've been on my webinars, what's really going on with birth certificates or certified entries, as they are often called as well. So this is where the story begins. It starts right at the beginning. The baby comes into the world and the mum and dad are coerced into registering what they think is the baby. But in reality, what is registered is the placenta. Sounds a bit gruesome, but if you are aware that in the hospitals now, they take the placenta away. They want to go and weigh it. They want to take it away from the mother. And they get a bit upset if you say, no, I want to keep that because that belongs to me. The mother says it's part of her body. She wants to keep it, right? Most mothers don't say that. I've heard a couple of stories where mothers have said that and the hospital doesn't like it. They want to take that placenta away. Now, the question that should be being asked is, why do they want to take that placenta? And the answer is because they want to register it as the certified entry. And that's what happens. So if you take out a birth certificate, I'm not going to say your birth certificate because it isn't yours. But if you take out the birth certificate that you may have in your filing cabinet or drawer or wherever you keep it, and you look at it, it's going to tell you a couple of things that should give you information that it is not you. So if you look at the date that the birth certificate is registered, you're going to almost certainly find it's a different day from the day that you were born. If you look at the bottom, certainly if it's in the Commonwealth, it will probably say this certificate should not be used as a form of identification. And if you look on the top left or right hand corner, depending on where it's been issued, there will be a reference number. So you may wonder, well, why is there a reference number? And I'm going to explain why. The placenta has been registered into the system as a decedent estate. It is a body corporate decedent estate. decedent meaning dead. Obviously, the placenta doesn't live, it dies. And that's what they have registered. It's a bit sinister, but it's the truth. And you can go and research this and you find out what I'm telling you is true. Now, the next question is, well, why would they want to register the placenta? Why would they want, why does the Crown, the Cabal, want to register a body corporate? Because if you look at it, it is the reference number of the birth certificate. It's like a security. It's like a company that's got a name and a number. It's a body corporate. It's not a living baby. What they've done is they've got the baby to be presumed lost across the seas. And if you take a look at the Sesquivay V Act of 1666, then upgraded to the 1707 version of the Sesquivay V Act, which is live all around the world in most countries. What's going on here is there is a presumption that the living baby is lost across the seas, and unless claimed to be alive, is presumed to be dead. And also the placenta is being registered as a decedent estate. Now the two are joined together because obviously they have the same DNA. Yeah, the baby, the placenta has the same DNA. So there's a natural joining of the two together. Now, not much goes on until the baby grows up and becomes of age. And we may want to use the term adult. I'm going to use it because everybody kind of understands and comprehends what that means. So let's talk about the age of 18 or the age of 21, because it's different in different countries. Suddenly there is the opportunity to get a social insurance number. It's called different things in different countries, but it's all social insurance. In the UK, it's national insurance. In the United States, it's the Social Security number. There's different names for different systems, but it's all basically the same registration system. Now, when you get offered the social insurance number, that social insurance number is for the body corporate. It is not for the living baby that's now become an adult, or it's now grown up. It's become a man or a woman. And what's going on here is that all the information that is circulating around during those formative years wants you to believe that the living man, woman is the body corporate. So you get the social insurance number issued, and then you might want to get a bank account, because maybe the body corporate is gone and got a job. So it might have a paycheck that it wants to bank. So it has to get a bank account in the name of the body corporate. Later on, it may want to get a loan to buy a car. It may want to get a mortgage to buy a house. It may want to put savings into investment schemes or pension schemes or whatever. It may want to get a passport so that it can travel from one corporate country to another. But all of those things are registered to the Crown under the birth certificate registration system. So you see, all the way from the beginning, when the birth certificate was first issued, that birth certificate is not for the baby. It is, and it's definitely not for the living man or woman. It is for the body corporate that sits on and plays on the game of Monopoly on that Monopoly board. So this is where, if you build this story up, we've all been deceived into believing that we are the body corporate that is on the Monopoly board, going round and round the board in an artificial corporate world. And everything on that Monopoly board is artificial and it is corporate. Now, the living man, woman is not on the Monopoly board. Just like the game of Monopoly, if you move a piece around the board, you're not on the board, yeah? You're moving the piece around the board. And if you look at what's happening in reality, the living man, woman is not on the Monopoly board of commerce. but they move the body corporate around just like the game of Monopoly. And they become the agent for the piece, the body corporate that is on the Monopoly board. And if you are the agent for the body corporate piece on the Monopoly board, the agent has the liability of the principal. So the body corporate that moves round and round the board is actually the responsibility, and the liability for that body corporate is with the living man woman, who thinks that they are the body corporate, because that's what the cabal want everyone to believe. This is why they, you may not have had it in the school you went to, but I had it in the one I went to. They call the register every morning. Is Smith, Brown and Jones in the classroom, and you all put your hand up and say, yeah, I'm here. Well, those names belong to the Crown. Because if you go back to the birth certificate, the family name or the surname, which is often written in capital letters, actually is a registered name together with the birth certificate registration number of the body corporate that is registered to the Crown. So if you then move up to registration, what does that really mean? If the body corporate is registered to the Crown and it sits on the Monopoly board and the living man woman is not on the board, they're off the board, but they're moving the piece around the board, and they're responsible for the piece on the board because of the joinder, the agency, the representative of the body corporate, but not the body corporate. And under the law of agency, the body corporate, whatever liabilities the body corporate has, are the responsibility of the agent being the living man or woman. So that's how they've tricked us. They've got us to believe that we are the body corporate. We're not. They've got us to underwrite the liabilities of the body corporate by being the agent for it. And we'll get to digital ID in a minute because it's all very relevant. And then they've registered the body corporate through the birth certificate registration system into their corporate system. And they own the body corporate. The cabal, the Crown, owns the body corporate. You then look at everything else that's on that Monopoly board. So the bank account that is registered in the name of the body corporate, that is registered and it's owned by the Crown or the cabal, because everything on that Monopoly board is registered to them. If you look at a car, go and get a car, and you have to register it to, in the UK, it's the DVLA, it's equivalent in other countries, some registration office. So why do you have to do that? The reason you have to do that is because the cabal, the Crown, own the car and they rent it back. In the UK, it's called the registered keeper. It's the same system everywhere else. So you get to use the car, but you don't own the car because the car is registered to the Crown, to the cabal, through registration, in the same way as the birth certificate body corporate is registered to the Crown on their Monopoly board. If you then look at a house, okay, so we're going to go and get a mortgage. Let's buy a house. Well, who is the house registered to? The land and the building is registered again to the Crown. They own the house. They get you to get what's called an equitable title. And that's what gives you the use of the house. So you actually get to rent the house even though you appear to own the house. In the same way as the car, you get an equitable title of the car. You get to use it, but you don't own it. You never own it. You never own the house. If you set up a company and you say, okay, I'm gonna run a business, the company is registered to the Crown, to the cabal. So although you can operate the company, you are effectively renting the company from the Crown, from the cabal. If you then say, I'm going to put some money into an investment account, all the instruments inside the investment account are also registered to the Crown. Okay, fine, I'm going to get a pension. All the instruments, financial instruments inside the pension, registered to the Crown. You don't own these things, you just get to use them. If you then say, okay, fine, I'm going to set up a trust, and I'm going to put all of the assets that are registered to the Crown inside a trust. Well, that's not going to help either, because everything that's registered to the Crown that's put into a statutory trust, the statutory trust has to report to the Crown what's inside the trust. So that type of trust isn't going to help either. So when you boil all this right down, the body corporate is on the Monopoly Board, it's registered to the Crown, all the so-called assets are also registered to the Crown, and the living man woman is renting everything from the Crown. Literally everything is being rented under a feudal system. So it never really went away. This is like modern slavery, slavery never really went away. It's just a modern version of it. And what they've done is they've trapped all the living men and women under a deception to underwrite the risks and the liabilities of the body corporate, whilst fooling them into believing that they have a car, they have a house, they have bank accounts, they have, assets, savings, pensions, cryptocurrency, whatever it might be. But in reality, all of those aforementioned are registered to the Crown. So that's the deception. There is an ebook that I've written which talks about the Monopoly Board deception. It's in the handouts. If you can comprehend what is going on here, then the solution to this problem starts to reveal itself. And the solution to this problem is to control what's on the Monopoly Board. That is the solution that we're going to talk about today. But unless you comprehend how the Monopoly Board has been laid up, and how nearly everybody in the world is only, I'd say, a tiny percentage of the world's population that actually has a comprehension of what is going on with registration, what is going on with body corporates, what is going on that Monopoly Board. Most are under a belief that they are the body corporate, that everything on the Monopoly Board is owned by them. If they've got a house, a car, a bank account, a pension, an investment account, or whatever, they actually believe that these things belong to them. If you then look at taxes, well, what really are taxes? Taxes is like rent. All these things on the Monopoly Board, owned by the cabal, if you use them, use the roads, use the schools, use the hospitals, use anything on that Monopoly Board, you have to pay rent. Well, that rent really is tax. They call it tax, but it's actual fact, it's rent under a feudal system. So that's how the problem is laid up. And if you read the Sun Tao book, The Art of War, you have to know your enemy. You have to understand what the landscape is. If you're going to solve any problem, you need to have a comprehension of the nature of the landscape that's in front of you. Now, digital ID is basically, it's like everything that you will do on that Monopoly Board is tracked and traced. So if the government is bringing out a digital ID rollout plan in the country that the body corporate that you think is you, but it isn't you, is registered to, then it's really controlling the body corporate's game of monopoly, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring in track and trace, social score linked to your bank accounts and linked to investments and linked to travel and all of those good things. But all of that control applies to the body corporate that is already registered to the Crown. So a lot of people say, we don't agree with this, we're not going to have it, we're going to protest, we're going to lobby the government, we're all going to come together and we're all going to shout loud from every rooftop that we don't want the digital ID. The problem is that the digital ID applies to the body corporate, and the body corporate is already registered to the cabal or to the Crown. It's their body corporate. If they want to track and trace it, they're going to do it, yeah, because it belongs to them. So this is the nature of the problem. But as I said at the beginning, with every problem comes a solution, and they always leave a solution on the table for those who want to find it. It's a little bit like being in a maze. If you're in the middle of a maze, you know that there's a way out, but you just don't know where to find it. But if you do find the way out, and you had a bit of string, and you put, you rolled a bit of string out on every corridor you went down on the maze, and then you eventually found your way out, you would be able to get back in and back out again. And that is what they do. They always leave a way out of the maze. They always leave a solution for the game of Monopoly. And the reason why is because the elites, they need a solution, because they don't want to be constrained in the same way as the vast majority of the world's citizens. Because a citizen is a person is a body corporate. A living man or woman is not a person. A living man or woman is definitely not a body corporate, definitely not a citizen, definitely not a person. A living man or woman is separate from all of the aforementioned. So that's the problem. Now let's start to talk a little bit about the solution. Let's move it forward. Now, in the United Kingdom, which by the way is a corporation, they're bringing in this thing which is being called the BRIC card, or the BRIC card, and it's dressed up as if it is, going to help us with immigration. If you're operating in the United Kingdom or in any other country where they're bringing something similar out, they're dressing it up as protection against illegal immigrants and things like this, terrorism. If we know where everybody is and everybody's got the right to be in the country, then we can save, humanity from terrorism and illegal immigrants and things of this nature. It's total and utter deception. It's got nothing to do with that. There's no evidence it would make any difference, even if it was about that. In fact, it's just a story to scare people into getting the BRIC card or the BRIC card. The reality of why they want it is because they want to link everything that's happening on the Monopoly board. They want to control that Monopoly board even more than they already do. So if you don't have the right social score level going forward, you won't be able to use your bank account in the way you want to use it. If you don't have the right social score going forward, you probably won't be able to travel. If you are a director of a company and you haven't got a BRIC card or you haven't complied with the digital ID, you probably can't operate your business. You probably won't be able to travel more than 15 minutes from where you live. It's all linked back to this ID card. And then all of the tracking and tracing. If you wonder why there's surveillance cameras everywhere, if you wonder why there's satellites that can track and trace you, bank accounts tracking and tracing, everything is track and trace. This ID card is another foundational block in this control system that they're building. As Catherine Austin Fitz says from the Solari report, it's a digital concentration camp. And I think that's probably why you're on this webinar, because you already realise that. So if you want to operate on the Monopoly board and you don't know that the body corporate is on the Monopoly board and you're not on that Monopoly board, you're going to have a big problem, because the body corporate is going to be tracked and traced and controlled to the nth degree, and it's going to get a lot more problematic going forward. Once they've rolled this out, there'll be all sorts of other measures that will be brought in that will make it nearly impossible to have any kind of freedom. And that's really what is being taken away. They're trying to take away our freedom. So, I've spent a long time talking about the problem. Let's start moving into the solution. Let's move it on. The the first step of the solution and the pathway to the solution is to realize that you are not the person. This body corporate that's playing on the Monopoly board is not you. It is a piece, just like a piece on a Monopoly game that goes round and round the board. It's not you. It looks like you. It has all the credentials that make it look like it's you, but it isn't actually you. So if you realize, and I'm sure you do now, that you're not this body corporate, you are a living man, woman. And if you want to correct the presumption, because the Crown, the Cabal presume that you are agreeing to be the body corporate, if you want to correct that presumption, there is a way of doing it. Under the Sesquivay V Act of 1666 and 1707, one of the things that you need to do to dismantle this presumption and to rescind the presumption is you need to declare that you're alive. Might sound ridiculous, but that's in the Sesquivay V Act 1666, is a declaration of life, and also in the 1707 upgraded version. If you don't declare that you're alive, they're going to presume that the living man, woman is dead. And they're going to presume that the body corporate is under their control because it's registered to them. And therefore, you must be the person because you've never told them that you're not. A person, if you go and look it up in the law, is a body corporate. A person is not a living man or woman. A citizen is not a living man or woman. So, the first step of the solution is to separate from the living you from the presumed body corporate. I'm not going to say you, but the presumed body corporate that has a name that you have been representing. And that is done. And we're going to talk about the envoy protocol as we go through this. There is a way of taking control of the body corporate, still operating the body corporate on the Monopoly board, but taking the Crown's control of the body corporate away. And that is done through declarations. It is done by standing. It is done by notices to the right parties in the right way. And it is rescission of the use of the name. There's something else I haven't told you about the name on the birth certificate, because it's now relevant. Because if you look at the name on the driving license, the passport, the bank card, if you look at that surname or family name, that name is the name, and the registration number is registered to the Crown on the birth certificate. Now, if you represent that you are that surname or family name, you're actually impersonating a body corporate that is registered to the Crown. And they want you to be the agent for and representative of that body corporate. They want you to say it's you. Because if you say it is you, and you can do that innocently by voting, by getting a driving license, passport, bank account, mortgage, travel, etc., etc., you are confirming on all of those things that you are the body corporate. And that means that the body corporate is operating in under an impersonation fraud, because its agent, i.e. the living man, woman, is representing the body corporate in fraud. They want you in fraud because they want to take all of the rights away from the living man, woman. But if you rescind that you're not using that surname, family name anymore, it's not you, and you realize it's not you, and there's declarations that will achieve that, and then you become a church envoy. So you actually become an envoy for an ecclesiastical ministry. You can then rise above their system. You also occupy what's called the office of the general executor over the body corporate. Because remember, the body corporate is a decedent estate. So as a decedent estate, it must have an executor, because all decedent estates in probate have to have an executor. Well, the Crown presumes that they are the executor of the decedent estate. So you correct that presumption with the declarations and notices that the living you, man, woman, is occupying the office of the general executor over the body corporate. So now you can control the body corporate. You still have it on the monopoly board. You control it. You take the control away from the Crown. It's still registered on their monopoly board. You can use it, but you're not saying that you are it. You are saying that it's not you, but you're going to use it because it's there to be used. So that's part of the solution. It's just the separation of that joinder of the agency, the living man, woman being the agent for the body corporate. If you separate that and it's all done in the right way, and you become an envoy for a ministry, that elevates you above the Crown system, above the cabal's system, the body corporate legal system. You can step above that by being an envoy for a church, by being a living man or woman who is rescinded that they're the agent for the body corporate, all the way back from the birth certificate issuance date forward. You can correct the record. Now that is very important for the digital ID, because you don't want to be that body corporate with a digital ID. In fact, as we go through the next few slides, I'm going to show you how you can play the Crown and the cabal at their own game, but you can be smarter than they have presumed that you are. You actually start to play the game that you want to play on that monopoly board, but without having to comply with the digital ID. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next few slides. Let's move it on. And it starts, as I mentioned on the previous slide, if you think about why would, and this is a question, why would someone like Tom Cruise pay 10% of his worldwide income to the Church of Scientology? Why would he do that? Why would he have been doing that for many, many years? This guy is a very high earner, yeah? Why would he want to give them 10% of his worldwide income? Why would people join the military order of Malta? Why would the Amish live the way they do? And the reason for all of those three, and there's many other examples, is because if you are an envoy for a church, you've elevated yourself above the legal system which controls the person, the citizen, that body corporate that's playing on the monopoly board. That is why celebrities pay the Church of Scientology 10% of their income, because they want that standing as a church envoy, because it elevates them above the cabal's legal system in many ways. That is an opportunity that you have with the Republic of Old Souls. And by the way, we don't ask you for 10% of your income to become a church envoy. If you also occupy the office of this decedent estate, this decedent person, you can then control the body corporate on the monopoly board, as I mentioned before, but without being it. You're separate from it, but you control it, and you do it using the Sescovades v Act 1666-1707, the law of probate, the law of agency, and also the fact that an envoy for a church is elevated above their system. So I'll ask another question. As we go through, I'm going to ask a few questions for you to think about. Can you remember, or can you find any example of the state suing a church and winning? I've yet to have anybody give me an example, and I've been asking that question for quite a few months now, not just on webinars, but also on all my interviews. And so far, nobody's being able to find a case where the state has successfully convicted a church. Then the next question is, how about the state successfully convicting a church envoy? You can't find that either. You see, the church and the state really don't fight each other. The church is above the state. So this is why so many very high income individuals are envoys for the Church of Scientology. There is a reason. It's not because they're all crazy and they all want to have some strange belief system going on. It's because they want to have protection. That protection is open to you by becoming an envoy for the Republic of Old Souls, which is a registered church on the Monopoly Board in the United States. And if you do that, and then you put a new piece on the Monopoly Board that doesn't have to comply with the digital ID, now you're starting to play Monopoly, and with the rules, you've downloaded the rules from somewhere, maybe from me, and you're now playing a more superior game than everybody else. You're playing a very powerful game on that Monopoly board. If you were to put a new piece on the Monopoly board, and if you separate from the body corporate in the way I've described in the last few minutes, let's move it on. So how do you do it? Well, I mentioned earlier, you serve a notice. Well, notices are very powerful. Declarations are very powerful. And you might be wondering, why would a notice be powerful? Well, a notice that complies with legislation, and the Sesquibay V Act 1666-1707 is very powerful, because it tells you in there that if you're going to be considered alive, you have to make a declaration of life. Well, a declaration is a notice. If you send 3 notices to the cabal and they don't rebut, then they are agreeing that whatever it is that you're declaring in your notice has to be true. Because in the law, there is a law of 3. You send 3 notices, they're not rebutted, that cements an agreement. The parties have now agreed. So if you send 3 notices out that you're no longer going to represent the body corporate, i.e. the surname, and you're rescinding that, and you're occupying the office of the general executor over the decedent estate, the person, the citizen, and that you are an envoy for the Republic of Old Souls, and they don't rebut it, then they are agreeing it after 3 notices have gone out. So now you've got a superior standing. You've got a hybrid, because the Republic of Old Souls is also a nation, a self-declared nation. So you've now become a diplomat and a church envoy. You put those 2 together and you have risen above the states, the crown's legislation system, which is basically its corporate policy. Legislation is corporate policy for the body corporate entities that play on the Monopoly board. There's a few more things that you can do, as I'll explain as we go through the next few slides. Let's move it on. Now, what piece are you going to put on the Monopoly board? If you want to carry on playing Monopoly, but you don't want to play Monopoly where the body corporate has to report everything to the Crown, to the government, to whoever it is who's introducing these ID cards, if you put a new piece on the Monopoly board and you put an international trust on the Monopoly board, and that trust is organized through the IRS, so that's the Internal Revenue Service, or the United States Treasury, where you can actually create an international grantor trust. And if you're doing bank payment recoupments and mortgage security recoupments, you already know what this international trust is, because you've probably already got one. You need another one, because if you get another one and you become, if you appoint the body corporate that you're now controlling as its trustee, and the living man woman is the beneficiary within this international trust, you can put that international trust on the Monopoly board, and it can play the game of commerce on the Monopoly board, and it doesn't need to comply with digital ID, because it's not a person. And even if it were a person, it's not in any country, because it's an international trust. It stands away from all the countries. It is recognized in the United States Treasury IRS system as an international foreign trust, foreign to the United States, foreign to every other country. It's not in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, any other country. It's international. So on the Monopoly Board, you put an international Monopoly Board piece on there, which you can control, that doesn't have to comply with digital ID. And that international trust can get banking, can enter into contracts, it can operate businesses, it can own property, actually own property outright, all within the trust. And it doesn't have to comply with the BRIC card or any other card that may be rolled out around the world. If you're doing bank payment recoupments and mortgage securities recoupments, which we call the Infinite Money Program, you need one of those trusts to recoup the credit, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a minute. But this is a new trust that you're going to set up. We call it the Asset Shelter Protocol, because it is a shelter of assets that you can put in there that doesn't have to comply with the digital ID. Let's move it on. And you can run all commerce through it. So you can have it as your interface on the Monopoly Board for, as I say, running a business, running your personal finances, running anything that you want to run. You can operate all of it through an international trust. You don't need to have bank accounts for the body corporate anymore if you don't want them, because that's what they're going to come after under the BRIC card. They're going to say, well, you haven't complied, so you can't access your bank accounts. They're not yours, they're the body corporates. But they can't do that with the international trust. You can hold assets. You can remove all the debt, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. You can remove all the debt from the body corporate, and you can hold real assets like property, like investments like gold and silver. You could hold land. You could hold art. You could hold a business. You could operate a business from the international trust without having to report it to anyone. All of those assets can be under the control of the trust, deregistered from the Crown. So remember, everything at the moment is registered to the Crown, but if you remove all the debt from the assets, like a car, like a house, a business, investments, if you remove that registration, which you can do, and then hold those things in private trust, now you're playing on the game of Monopoly, but you're not having to comply with track and trace, digital ID, or taxes, for example, as well. Let's move it on. And that's what we call it, the Asset Fortress Protocol. It is an international trust that will shelter everything in the trust on the Monopoly Board, and you get to control it, but you don't own everything in the trust because the trust owns it. So this is what the super rich have done for centuries. They own nothing but control everything. You see, if you are seen to own something, even if it's the equitable title to a house, a bank account, a car, a business, you are seen to have responsibility and liability for it. But if you don't own it, you don't have any liability for it. So what you do is you control it through trust, but you never own it. The trust owns it. And that separation is what will set you free from the digital ID. The trust is on the Monopoly Board. The trust doesn't have to register for digital ID. You get to control everything in the trust, but you don't own anything in the trust. You don't want to own it, because if you own anything in the trust, beneficial ownership is different from legal title ownership. If you own it legal title, then you are responsible for it. So you put the trust in there to own things. You deregister them from the Crown, so now none of their legislation applies either. They can't come into your house if you own the house outright, and you've taken the registration away from them and you've registered it to the trust. The same with any other asset. They only have a jurisdictional control if they own the legal title, which they do in nearly every case at the moment. So you get them out of there by taking that legal title into your trust. And then you benefit from the asset, but without owning it, but you control it. That is what the super rich have done all the way through. That's how they stay rich. That's how they stay out of jail. What we're doing here, or what I'm doing, is layering it up a bit further. Let's move it on. Okay, now a lot of people will say, well, that's all very well, but you know, I'm still going to have my mortgage to pay. I've still got my credit cards and loans to pay. I've still got to go out there and get a job because, you know, I need a job or I need to do something to generate cash flow. Otherwise, I'm going to be in a very difficult place. And my employer is saying to me, I have to give them a digital ID, otherwise I can't be employed anymore. Yeah? Or Companies House in the UK is going to say, if you don't do the digital ID, you can't run your business anymore as a director or a shareholder. Yeah? Okay. So let's start talking about Poor Peter and Infinite Ian, which you're going to see in the ebooks. So Poor Peter, and I'm sorry about I haven't got a name for the ladies, but I've just used Peter and Ian at the moment. Poor Peter doesn't know anything about the Monopoly Board. He doesn't know anything about birth certificates. He doesn't know anything about banking. He doesn't know anything about what's really going on that Monopoly Board. So he gets himself, he's got to keep his job, so he gets the ID card. He's going to have to keep all of his, he thinks that his bank accounts and his investments and his pensions and all of that stuff that he's going to carry on with, right? And he thinks there's no other choice. Got to comply with this digital ID because everybody else is kind of having to comply with it. So I'm going to comply with it as well, right? Well, he's going to end up being absolutely controlled to the nth degree. Whether he realizes it now or not, he's going to realize it going forward. Whereas Infinite Ian says, why do I need that job? Because I can recoup my credit under the infinite money protocol. So all those bank payments I've been making, certainly for the last 3 years, and all of those mortgages I've had in the past, I can recoup those under the infinite money program. And if I recoup all that, and then I use it to spend and then recoup and spend and recoup and spend and recoup, why do I need to have a job? Why do I need to run that business anymore? Why don't I just have a different lifestyle and put everything in the asset fortress protocol in that trust and then recoup all the credit that I'm putting out there onto the Monopoly Board? I can recoup it. I don't need to have a job going forward. I don't need to run a business going forward. I can operate by the infinite money protocol without having to be tracked and traced because I've got everything in private trust. And I don't need to have that job or business anymore unless I want to put the business in the international trust. Now I don't need to tell my employer, here's my digital ID number, because I don't need a job. So let's talk about how does the infinite money program work. Now, in your handouts, you've got a handout which is called The Banks Are Using Your Credit and How to Recoup It. Now, we haven't got time to go into this into detail, but every bank that you have ever had a relationship with is using your credit. So when you get a bank account, or you think it's yours, it's actually the name of the body corporate, and you deposit something into it, and then you transfer from that account to someone else's account, what's actually going on there is the bank is using you, your energy, through the body corporate, which is a public banker under the Bills of Exchange Act 1882. And every time you do a transaction, you're making a deposit. You're depositing your energy, in fact. So bank payments are securities. They're not transfers at all. They're creations of securities. And this is how it works. If I wanted to pay Sims £1,000, and I would set it up in my bank account and send it over to Sims, and she would say, my account's gone up by 1,000 and I see mine going down by 1,000. No, neither me or Sims is going to say, let's go and complain to the banks. That doesn't look right. No, because it looks right. Yeah? But what's really going on here is that I deposited a new security in Sims's bank account. And Sims said, okay, fine, I've seen it in my account, so there's no problem. But what the bank did is it took my security in as 1,000 and it treated it as its own asset. And on the other side of its balance sheet, it matched it with a liability. And that liability is the 1,000. It's new 1,000 that was created. It's like hocus pocus. It's like a shell game. It's like a magician's trick. The banks use your credit. They take the deposit. They take it in as their asset and they match it with a liability on the other side of the balance sheet. And that asset has become a liability. And that's what goes into the account. So the banks are using those deposits, which basically is the energy of the living men and women, as if it was theirs. And they treat it on the monopoly board. That's how they create credit, as nominees for you. So they're nominees or fiduciaries for you. And all of that credit, all of those bank payments are the same. That credit belongs to you and you can recoup it from the monopoly board. If you get a mortgage, you sign a mortgage contract and deposit the face value of the mortgage with the bank. The bank says, thank you very much. They hold that deposit as their asset. They match it with a liability on the other side. And they say, you'll find the mortgage in your account. But that mortgage face value never existed before. The bank created it from your deposit and then typed into their computer a liability and said it was your liability. But in fact, it's your credit that they're using. So you can recoup all of your face value mortgages and your last 3 years bank payments. And then if you then make all those other deposits going forward, so let's use the word spending, you spend, recoup. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've had 3 mortgages in the past and they add up to $1 million. Let's just use dollars, $1 million of face value, and you recoup those. And then you spent $250,000 in the last 3 years from your bank accounts, just spending out of your bank accounts. You've now got 1.25 million that you can recoup. Once you've recouped it, you spend it. You recoup it again. You spend it again. You recoup it again. You don't need a job now, do you? You don't need to run that business unless you like running your business. So that is the infinite money protocol. And it's not a theory. You've got a book. It explains exactly how it all works. It's on the handouts. And right now, we've got over $225 million sitting on IRS confirmed tax transcripts. Some of our members have received their recoupments. This is not a theory. This is reality. This is exactly how the system works. And it's open to you to do this, recoup bank payments and recoup mortgages. You can actually recoup other things as well, but we're focusing on bank payments and mortgages because they're the highest value to recoup. So that's another reason why you don't have to comply with the digital ID, because the body corporate doesn't need to get a job or keep a job or run a business. Let's move it on. So here's your mortgage redemption. So with the mortgage redemption protocol, you can recoup the face value of those mortgages. Many people have had multiple mortgages in their lifetime. All of that credit is sitting on the monopoly board waiting for you to recoup it. The mortgage face value is probably a lot more than 1 year of bank payments. Almost certainly it could be several years of bank payments. It could be 5, 10 years of bank payments. So if you can recoup the past mortgages, just think of what that can do for you to step onto that monopoly board under international trust and not have to run a business or a job. Let's move it on. Now, if you've got a current mortgage, or the body corporate's got a current mortgage, you can discharge that mortgage by, it's a process of three things. It's voiding the mortgage with the mortgage provider and an entity called the indentured trustee. Because every single mortgage that's ever been created has been created in the way I described. You make a deposit, the bank says thank you very much, they match it as if it's their asset with a liability, and they say you'll find the mortgage in your account. Then that currency never existed before. So the mortgage is void because they never gave you any consideration under the contract. But you're not going to win on that basis. You're not going to go in a courtroom and win, and you're never going to go in a courtroom under the Mortgage Liberation Protocol. What you're going to do is you're going to serve a notice on the indentured trustee. So all the mortgages have been packaged up. They've been sold into the securitization market. If you watch the movie The Big Short, you'll know what I'm talking about, which has got Brad Pitt in it. He plays a banker. That's what's going on. All of the mortgages are transferred to the indentured trustee, and all the indentured trustees work in and around Wall Street in New York. So all of those trusts, which are mortgages, have been misreported by the indentured trustees. The indentured trustees are reporting that the mortgage beneficiary is the bank that originated the mortgage. But in fact, it's the body corporate that deposited the mortgage security with the bank. So it's being misreported. And if you notice and serve notice on the indentured trustee, and you also send them a bill of exchange to discharge the mortgage, lawfully, you can redeem the mortgage, you can recoup, and then you can recoup it. So you're voiding it, discharging it, and then recouping it, and you're doing it all at the top of the system, not at the mortgage provider, not in a courtroom. You're never going to win in a courtroom, and you're never going to get a mortgage provider to admit that a mortgage is void. You do it all at the top of the system. So you void, discharge with a bill of exchange, remove the mortgage charge by leveraging the indentured trustee, and you do that through a fraud report. You also do it through what's called a lien over the indentured trustee. But you're very honourable. You actually discharge it with a bill of exchange, which they have to accept. And then the clincher is you recoup the face value of that deposit, not from the mortgage provider, not from the indentured trustee, but from the IRS Treasury, stroke United States Treasury. That abandoned credit that you've left on the monopoly board that belongs to you. You put all of those four things together. It's the most powerful mortgage liberation package available anywhere. So if you haven't got debt, and you can take the property out of the registration of the Crown and hold it in your international asset fortress protocol, your trust or international trust, now you can control without owning, because the trust owns, but you can control it, and you don't have to register it. They can't come in that property or on the land because it's no longer registered to them. So there's no ID restrictions on the property or on the body corporate anymore, because you've taken it out of their system, but you still control it on the monopoly board. Let's move it on. So you have to operate as a living man woman, and you do that through notices, rescissions. You do that by becoming the occupant of the office of the General Executor. You control the decedent estate of the person, the citizenship. You create a trust. You put that trust on the monopoly board. You can do all your banking, own all your property and investments through the international trust. That piece on the monopoly board can't be controlled by the cabal, because they've left the door open for international trusts. They're not going to tell you this. You're not going to see this on the television. Nobody's going to explain this. No accountant, lawyer, or so-called expert is going to explain this, because they don't even know themselves. And you don't need a job or a business or a directorship. You can transfer all of that, apart from the job, into the trust, and you don't even need a job going forward because you can recoup your credit. Let's move it on. So here we're back to poor Peter. It's actually, there's a typo. It should say poor Peter, not Paul Peter. I've just noticed that. And, you know, poor Peter's going to get that brick card. He's going to get that digital ID because he thinks there's no other choice. Going to have that because everybody else is getting it. I have to have it. There's no way out of it. Well, there is a way out of it. You can still play the game of Monopoly, but by playing smarter than poor Peter's playing, because he's just complying. Because he thinks there's no other option. He thinks there's no other choice. And he doesn't realise that he's left all of that abandoned credit on the Monopoly board for him to recoup. Because he doesn't know any of these things. He's not coming on my webinars, poor Peter. Let's move it on. By contrast, you can run everything. Infinite Ian's going to run everything through the private trust. Going to recoup all the abandoned credit, doesn't need a job, doesn't really want to run a business either, just wants to have a free lifestyle, and maybe wants to join with all the others who are involved in Republic of Old Souls with independent infrastructure of power and water and food and internet communication, independent of the cabal, and a gold-backed currency, and goods and services being exchanged within a community. Because that's also a way of avoiding the digital ID. If you don't need any of the cabal's systems and services, because you can get everything you need externally, independently, again, you don't need the digital ID. And that's the big vision of to what we're working on at the Republic of Old Souls. Let's move it on. So the person is a problem. Poor Peter is a problem because he's the agent for this body corporate, registered to the Crown, under their control. The cabal's got everything covered. There's no way out of that digital concentration camp. All the time you're running all your commerce through poor Peter. Or you can have this international trust, recoup all your credit, and operate smarter and free. Those are your two choices, really. Even if you don't believe anything I've told you, if you read the ebooks and look at the proof, you'll start to believe it, because everything I'm telling you is 100% true. Let's move it on. So for those who want to say, you know, or ask the question is, well, how do you do all this? So I'm sure some of you might be thinking that. It starts off by becoming an envoy of the Ministry of the Republic of Old Souls, and that's a notice. Setting up an international trust. We've already set up thousands of them for our membership already. It's fairly easy to do. And setting up the asset shelter protocol. You're going to want to recoup your bank payments and your mortgages. That gives you the ability to control the monopoly board through international trust without needing the job, without needing to run the business, unless you want to put the business into the trust. You're going to want to redeem the mortgages from the past, and you want to basically just operate free without having to report anything to the cabal. And the international trust doesn't have to report anything. It's tax exempt. It is also exempt from the ID. That's what the smart people are going to do. That's, by the way, in my opinion, what the elites are probably already doing. But they're not going to tell you that. Let's move it on. So rather than bank through the body corporate, is you bank through the international trust. And you can get a trust account for the international trust. We've got many ways of doing that. And you can transfer all your banking over there. And it doesn't stop you from operating on the monopoly board. You can get all the same payment cards, debit cards, all those usual things. You probably won't need a credit card because you remember you're recouping your bank payments and your mortgages. So it's a new world. I realise it's a different world for a lot of you to think about. But if you do the comparison, I think I know, and I'm pretty sure that when we get to the polls, I don't think many people are going to want to stay as poor Peter. Let's move it up. You actually got quite a few handouts, but the key one is no digital ID workbook. You got the handouts, which we'll cover. I think it's on the very last slide of the presentation. We've got all of the handouts, and I'll give you an overview of what they all are. And I was doing an interview yesterday, and the guy who's interviewing me said, you know, this is amazing, all the things that you're offering. But, you know, the problem is, you know, his group wouldn't know how to set them all up, wouldn't know how to operate them all, how to get them off the ground. And I said, well, that's why we facilitate everything, because most people don't know how to set all these things up. So everything is facilitated. You're in control, and you're basically employing our administrators to set everything up that we've organised. You control when you want it to be set up, but we do all the heavy lifting and all the facilitation of it. So that gives you the pathway of the facilitation of all of these things I've talked about. Let's move it on.
Okay, so these are the most common questions that we have had. So we put them together here now. I have seen other questions coming through as well. And you may have been noticing I've been writing, so I've been taking a note of you and the time that you've submitted your questions, so I haven't forgotten. So we will try and get through as many as possible. There are some I know Ian has answered. I know quite a big thing is about those who are company directors. So we will go through that again, because I think this is a really big thing as well. So, Ian, really, do you want me to read these? Do you want to read them out and answer them? So,
I mean, I know there's lots more questions than this, but I tried to find the ones that were probably the more frequently asked questions. How do you bank, rent, or work without enrolling yourself? Well, you don't have to work if you're recouping your credit, so you've got to get on that journey, right? So then you don't have to work unless you love working. And if you want to work, go to the employer and say that you're going to be, you want to have a contract, and the contract will be with your private trust, your international trust. So if you go to if you really love your job, but you don't want to be PAYE anymore, because PAYE is going to come with digital ID, you go to the employer and say, look, I'll carry on doing whatever it is I'm doing, but you need to have, you want to have a contract. So your asset shelter protocol, your international trust, will engage in contract with the employer. They don't have to pay you on PAYE for an international trust. Now, some employers won't do it. I get it, but some will. Or you just go and get a different occupation, or you stop working because you have the recoupments coming in. So that's how you deal with the work issue. Unless you love being PAYE, I actually believe that PAYE is one of the traps, because you have to have this digital ID. So, you know, if you want a PAYE, you can't have it without digital ID. Yeah, so it's a trap. One of the reasons I've never liked PAYE is all of these things are traps. Rent. How do you rent a property if you don't have digital ID? Well, the same thing is you go to the landlord and say, look, if you want me to carry on paying rent, I'm going to pay it through my international trust. So reorganize the contract with my international trust. And if you're doing recoupments, you can pay the rent in advance. So you could pay a year, 2 years in advance and then recoup it. So remember, everything you pay out, you can recoup. So that's how you deal with rent. Enrolling yourself. Well, you don't have to enroll yourself if you don't need to play on the Monopoly board as a person, because you're going to play on the Monopoly board as the beneficiary of an international trust. So that hopefully deals with the work, it deals with the rent, and we'll come back to the mortgage in a while, because if the mortgage is a problem, we'll come back to that on question number 6. What documents prove my separation, living versus person and church envoy status? Well, you get a certificate, all your notices that have been served, you actually get a certificate of being an envoy of the Republic of Old Souls. You probably won't need to show it very many times, but you do have all the documents to evidence it. And if any Crown actor tries to say, oh, you need this ID because if you don't have it, you can't do something or other, then you can pull out your card, because you have a card as well, and you've got a certificate that you are not a citizen. You're a living man, woman, as an envoy of a ministry. You don't have to comply with digital ID, because it only applies to the body corporate, and that is not you. How does the International Trust open accounts and who signs on its behalf? Well, you see, the International Trust has the body corporate as its trustee. And as a trustee, the trustee, that's the body corporate, the one that is not you, but everybody thinks it's you, that signs for all the bank accounts. All the due diligence that the banks need to open up trust accounts, they're asking the trustee, which is the body corporate. The living you is the beneficiary, remember, of the International Trust. So that's how you open bank accounts. Many organizations offer trust accounts. It's quite common. And the type of international trust that we're talking about makes it even easier, because it's recognized by banks as an international trust with an EIN number. So you get an EIN number. So the trust itself becomes an employee of the United States Incorporated. And because it's got an EIN number, it can easily get banking. And it's the trustee that has to evidence things like, whatever ID evidence is that the bank's asking for. It's all done through the trustee. You are the living man, woman beneficiary. You're not the trustee, remember. The trustee is the body corporate. That's what's called split title. Because there are two titles. There's the living man title, woman, and then there is the body corporate, the person, the citizen. That's the split. These two are separate. You separate them through your notices, but now you're playing on that monopoly board with the International Trust. And the bank accounts are in the name of the trust, remember. They're not in the name of the body corporate. That's how you do it. What if an employer, landlord, bank insists on the BRIC card? Well, they're not going to insist on it if all your activities are through the International Trust. So if a landlord is saying, where's this ID card? We need that in order to continue the contract, move the contract to the trust, as I mentioned on answer number 1. Same with the employer. What's the correct implementation order? Well, you really need to be the envoy first. You've got to be the ministry envoy first. You really need to have the trust set up, and then you need to really get your banking organized. That comes with the asset shelter protocol. And then you need to remove debt. You've got to get rid of debt, get rid of all the mortgages, get rid of credit cards, loans, get rid of all that shit, so that you can operate inside the trust without debt, recouping all your credit. And now you're pretty much untouchable going forward. The asset fortress, input money, well, they all fit together because what I've done is I've built them to complement each other. And you can see all that in the workbook, in the handbook that you got as a handout. What record keeping and compliance are there? Well, this is one of the best things about international trusts. There is no reporting. There is no bookkeeping. There's no there's no taxes. There's no self-assessments. There's no declarations of values of this, that, and the other. Everything in this type of international trust is exempt. That's why the elites use it, because they put it on the monopoly board as an exempt trust. That's number 7. If there's any more questions, I'm sure there probably are. Let's go through them.
Okay. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to start. It's literally going. So can I politely ask everybody? I know you want all your questions to be answered. Okay. Can we please do not enter any more questions, because I've literally written pages and I don't want to miss anybody out. Okay. So can I politely ask? I know you probably go, I want my question to be asked. We will get to it. So bear with. So what's coming up, especially about those who are company directors, and one that's just literally just popped in here, so I'm going to get this answered now and go back to some other ones. Accountants are now asking company directors to provide a version of a digital ID. How can we avoid this, especially if employers have to be signed up to an ID requirement to pay salaries as well?
Well, the way to handle that is basically not to use the company, because if you use some practice, the company is already registered to the Crown. So although it may appear that it's your company, it's not. It's their company. They make the rules because everything on that monopoly board is registered to them. So you have to replace the company with a trust, and you operate the business from the trust. So you move all your other contracts over, whatever the contracts are, suppliers, customers, whatever they are, you put it in the international trust. Now you're running the international trust, providing the goods, services, products, whatever it might be. You no longer need the company, and that company can then be made dormant. And then it doesn't need a digital ID. The directors don't need to run a digital ID compliance protocol, because they've moved everything into the trust. And in fact, if you think about this, right, let me give you a choice. Do you want to run a company that has to report everything to the government, that has to pay taxes to the government, that has to comply with all of the legislation that the government wants the company to comply with? Or do you want to run the business through an international trust that doesn't have to report to the government, doesn't have to comply with legislation, where the directors aren't directors? The directors can be trustees of the international trust, and the beneficiary is the living man, woman that can take all of the benefits out with no tax and no legislation and no digital ID. So that's what I would be doing. If it were me, I would not run a company anymore, because the company is a control mechanism. If you think of why are there so many companies set up? For years they've been saying, if you want to avoid liability, set up a company, limited liability. It's been a trap all the way along the line. International trust. You can do everything that you can do in a company through an international trust, but without all of that liability and without that digital ID requirement. That's what I would be doing.
Well, I hope, especially those who added questions earlier. So someone did say, how do I run a limited company without registering for digital ID? And the other question, let's have a look. Where was it here? Because I was making a note. The government now wants all company directors to be verified. Any director who continues to act without verifying their identity will be committing an offence. The company is also committing an offence if they fail to rectify this. What can we do about this? Which you have gone through all that as well. Now,
the body, before we move on, the body corporate and the company are both pieces on that monopoly board. They've trapped us all, man. Everything that we've all been doing for years and years and years is basically been leading us into this trap. Because they will say, well, you can't operate your life without your company, so you have to comply, yeah? You can't operate your commerce without the body corporate, so they think they've trapped you, but they haven't.
Right, thank you for that. Now, we did have some questions about the placenta. Hope you've got strong stomachs. Lucky I haven't had my breakfast yet. But two of them literally were at the same time said, I kept both my children's placentas, but they still have birth certificates. Does that mean they are not in void? But here's the next one. And apparently I do know they're supposed to be very, very good for you. Again, I hope everybody else has strong stomachs. My sister has had 2 children. Both times she kept her placenta and had them made into supplements for herself because, they're supposed to be very, very good. So the man never got her placenta. What happens in this instance?
Well, the Crown will just find a way around that. I mean, they want to register the placenta, but what they'll do is they'll just still register everything, because they see everything on the Monopoly board is rigged. They run it the way they want to run it. They make the rules. It's a club, and we're not in it. It's all those things, right? So they're still going to register. They're going to make a registered entry. If there's a birth certificate, there's a registered entry. A certified copy of an entry is what you'll see on the certificate. They still make that entry, even though they didn't get the placenta. They really want the placenta, but if they don't get it, they still register the entity. It's like setting up a company. They still form the company, whether you like it or not. They're going to do that thing.
Thank you for that. Question came through. There are people searching out unregistered land and registering it to themselves. If one removes assets from the registration, how does one protect against such claims?
Yeah, I've looked into this, and a lot of people who don't realise what they're doing, you see, they take unregistered land and then they register it under the body corporate, which then registers it to the Crown. So they think that they're getting something valuable, but all they're getting is a quittable title over the land. So it was unregistered, now it's registered. It has to be registered. You can't use it unless it's recorded somewhere. You could, and I'm sure people would say you can do anything you want on your own land, but at some point it needs to be tidied up. And if you take it unregistered, and then some kind of document somewhere is registering it under the body corporate, then you're putting it straight back in on the Monopoly board, straight under Crown ownership. That's the big problem. If you go all the way back to the feudal system where landlords used to own all the land, go back hundreds of years, all the landowners owned everything, and all the paupers used to work on the land. They've just moved that system on and disguised it through registration. It's the same system. It's just been disguised.
Someone asked, if I change my body corporate name by default to add a name that I'm known by, but which is still body corporate, which name needs to be on the notices? Is it the original birth certificate name or the deed poll name? Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's like saying, you've got a company and it's called ABC Limited, and then you're going to change it to DEF Limited. So just changing the name of the company, it's all you're doing. It's still the same company. It's still got the same registered number. And in the record, it's the original name. So you see the body corporate name, the surname, family name, that's what's registered to the Crown. Any updated name is still going to reference back to the original name on the birth certificate. You get married, it's still going to reference back to the registered name on the birth certificate. I'm not going to talk about marriage because that's another body corporate, right? But what the real name, the proper name is, and I'm not being religious, but it's called the Christian name, right? So that's what it's called in the law. Ian Clifford are Christian names. And that is the proper name. If you look into the name, the problem with the name, if you add the family name on, now that is the body corporate. So you take the family name off. You don't use that. You use the Christian names. If you don't have two, make one up. If you want to be known by some other name, you can make up any name you want. Because remember, it's not registered. The registered name is the surname, family name, not the Christian names. You can call yourself whatever you like, because you are the living man, woman. You're not on the Monopoly board, remember. Only the surname, family name, registered body corporate is on the Monopoly board. You're not on that board. You can call yourself anything you want off the board. That's how you do it.
Someone asked,
sorry, just because I think there was a question about what you put on the notices. Well, the body corporate name birth certificate goes on the notices.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Next question is, will I still receive my pension when I become a church envoy? Thank you so much.
Well, the body corporate will receive the pension, but it's very likely, in my opinion, that no one's going to get a pension going forward, because everyone's going to get social credit. So pensions will probably go. But why would you need a pension if you're recouping your credit? So think about it. You've got the last 3 years bank payments, unclaimed mortgages that you can recoup. You don't need a pension unless you've not had any bank payments in the last 3 years and you've never had a mortgage. And if you're in that category, then you're probably it's probably quite a rare situation that somebody in our audience has never had any bank payments for 3 years and never had a mortgage. Even if you've just had bank payments, if you scoop up all of them for the last 3 years and recoup them, spend, recoup, spend, recoup, spend, recoup, why do you need a pension? I don't understand.
Someone asked, can the bank freeze trust bank accounts? In fact, I've had quite a few people asking that.
Banks can do what they want, but the type of banks that you're probably going to have is highly unlikely. It's good business for banks. Trust accounts, they like trust accounts because they're typically higher value. They like that stuff. Banks can do anything. Banks are on the monopoly board. Ultimately, anything can happen. But if they're going to freeze a trust account, they're definitely going to freeze a body corporate account that doesn't have an ID, because that's what's going to come. If you don't have an ID, you won't get a bank account. Simple as that.
Someone asked, can you recoup payments made through a trust bank account? Got quite a few of those as well that came through.
Yeah, there is a way of doing that. So you can use the trust, spend out of the trust and recoup back to actually recouping back to another trust. Not the same trust, but you can use the trust. So bank payments made from an international trust can be recouped. Yes, they can.
Okay. Now, what I was thinking of doing, just pause for the questions for the time being, if that's okay with everyone, because I know we've got some polls, and then what we'll do, we'll continue with the rest of the questions as well. So these are the polls that we're going to do, and then once we've finished that, then we'll continue with the questions. So there's quite a few, and I want to make sure everybody's questions are being asked. But I do know a lot of members, the feedback I've had when I've been speaking to a lot of our members, when doing testimonial interviews, and also our advocates, they love this. So I thought, let's do this, and then we will continue with the rest of the questions. And also there are some a particular website we want to show, and this particular website where I will be sharing, if you're advocates, stay on, because there's something I will be telling you about as well. So what I'm going to do, let's start with poll number 1, Envoy Protocol. Envoy Protocol, correcting standing as a living man and woman, serving notice and operating life by an international trust. What's your reaction? Is that yes, love it? No, you don't love it? Or you can say number 3, I need more information. So let's go and share the very first one. So it should be popping up any moment, and you should be able to click and start voting. So let's go and see how we're doing at the moment. You guys are really getting the hand of this, aren't you? Because you're really speedy on this. So this is great to see. And as I said, we really do get a lot of feedback about this. People love this, and they love seeing what the results of the polls are. So what I'm going to do, we're over 53% of you guys already. We've got a very big audience today as well. We knew this was going to be a very, very popular topic. And I know when speaking to a lot of you, you've all been asking for this particular presentation. So what I'm going to do right now, I am going to close this down. So really, I should be making a note of this, shouldn't I? Let's have a look. Okay, let's close this down right now. And I'm going to share the results. So as you can see, 85% of you said yes, 0 on the no, and 15% said I like more information, which is great. So everybody, thank you so much for taking the time out for voting for poll number 1. I'm now going to hide that and go into poll number 2. So Asset Fortress Protocol, moving titles, banking and income into an international trust to operate off the Brit card rails. What's your reaction? If so, if you love it, then I'll obviously vote for yes. If you don't love it, I'll be surprised if you don't like it. Say no, or if you need more information. So let's launch poll number 2. Off we go. Wow, goodness me. You guys are very, very quick. So let's poll number 1. Let's make a note. So let's have a look how we're doing. Yeah, you're really quick so far. Over nearly 60% of you are voting, so pretty quick. Just get a few more of you on here. Okay, thank you so much. I'm now going to close this, and now I'm going to share the results with you. Okie dokie. So 85%, hold on, is that 85%? I can just about see that. 86, oh my goodness, my eyesight. 86% said yes, 1% said no, 14% said yes. Okay, so that someone obviously just voted at the very last minute before I shut down, and we got to 86%. So again, thank you so much for voting. Let's now go to the next poll. So let's get that up. Let's put poll number 3. So Infinite Money Protocol, annual recoupments of bank payments by taking the creditor position and filing correctly. What is your reaction? Do you love it? If you do, then press yes. If you don't love it, then say no. But if you want more information, then by all means just say and vote for you want more information. Let's launch the poll now. Here we go. Wow, you guys are very quick. Very quick. You're getting a hand of this now, aren't you? Yeah, you see? I knew you guys were loving this. It's really good, isn't it? Just to get the reaction and what everybody else is thinking as well. How are you doing, Ian? You all right? You're very quiet there. You okay?
Well, I was going to be a DJ, but yeah, I didn't organise the music in time, so that's
oh dear.
Yeah.
Right, let's give it a bit more time. See how we're doing. Okay. So thank you so much for everybody who has voted. I'm now going to close the polls. I'm now going to share the results. So 88% of you, when it should pop up, said yes. 0 of you, there was no votes for no. And 12% said would want more information. Okay, great. Thank you so much for everyone who voted for poll number 3. So let's close that down. And poll number 4. So this is Mortgage Redemption Protocol. Recouping credit embedded in past mortgages into the International Trust. What is your reaction to that? Do you love it? If so, say yes. If you don't love it, say no. But if you want more information, then of course just select you want more information. Let's launch right now. So here we go. Goodness me, you are super quick. Here we go. Already over 55% of you voted in the first 18 seconds. And there's a lot of you on here. So very super quick from you guys. Still going through. Let's have a look. And I shall start closing this down. Just wait for a few more people to vote. Okay, I shall now shut that down. Again, thank you everybody who has voted for that. Let me now launch that. Just give it a bit of time with GoToWebinar just to hand over the results. And 81% of you voted for yes, 2% said no, and 17% said I need more information. So again, thank you so much for everybody for voting. And the last poll that we have, and that is the Mortgage Liberation Protocol, the void discharge of current mortgage, then recoup and hold for beneficial use under the trust. What is your reaction? If you love it, then say yes. If you don't love it, say no. But if you want more information, then I think you know what you need to vote for. Okay, so let's get to poll number 5 and let's launch. Wow. Good God, you guys are really, really quick, aren't you? Here we go. Already 50% of you in the first 10 seconds have voted. Wow, pretty quick. Unfortunately, there's no prizes. Who's the fastest finger first on this one, I'm afraid. But you guys are super quick this morning. You have obviously all had your coffee. Right, let's have a look. So far, we're sitting on the same. Let's see if there's any changes. Already 60% of you have voted, so pretty quick. Any more? Just give you a bit more time. Okay, well, thank you for those who have voted. I shall now close that down. And I'm now going to share the results, and that should pop up any moment. And 74% of you have said yes, 6% said no, and 20% of you said I need more information. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in these polls. We do appreciate it, and we do appreciate your feedback. And I know everybody absolutely love this. So let me get back to the slides, which I have. And we've had really good feedback. Everybody's been loving today's presentation. As I said, Ian, and as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, this has been requested. You know, we've had so many people, I know for me, have been asking this as well. And I know a lot of our members have been asking my wonderful colleagues this as well. But someone has said, yeah, another awesome presentation, truly life-changing information. Definitely need to break free from this satanic control system. Can't thank you enough for everything that you do. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. Now, Ian, as I said, we've still got a few more questions coming through. Are you okay for me to go through that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of the time for everybody as well. So I know the time is nearly, wow, they say time flies when you're having fun. It's nearly midday UK time. So let me get to the next question. So there's a lot of you who've already put your questions through already. So let's go back, because I don't want people thinking I'm ignoring you. So just going back, quite a few of you here. So just a polite reminder, this webinar is being recorded. It will be on the platform very, very soon. I've seen a whole lot of questions come through. I haven't gone through because during the polls, there were some questions being submitted, but please note, we will only be answering questions relating to this webinar only, as per my intro earlier today. So let me go back, because there were some other questions coming through, and there was one particular one I noted. Where is that? Yes, I think you may have already answered this. Where would the funds recouped be stored if the bank refuses to play the game and don't give you a bank account? So I believe we've already answered that, because there's so many questions coming through at the moment, as you can imagine. Right, let's have a look here. In fact, while I'm looking at, here we go, traveling. Everybody's asking about traveling. How can we travel without digital ID? Will getting a diplomatic passport without biometrics? And someone also says, again, how can we travel overseas as they require our fingerprints? And what's the workaround for that, please?
Well, I didn't put it in the presentation because I'm working on it at the moment, and I didn't want to offer it unless I know you can do it. But the law enables an envoy for a ministry and a diplomat of a self-declared nation to get a United States diplomatic passport. And I'm in progress of getting one of those for me. And I've been to the American Embassy 3 times, and they've asked me all sorts of questions, and I've answered them all. And I'm literally waiting to get a response. And if they don't grant it, then I should be taking up a lawsuit against the State Department, because the law is very clear on this. It's actually a First Amendment right for a living man envoy or living man woman church envoy who's also a diplomat to get a passport, United States. So watch this space. As soon as I get a result or get a barrier that that I'm going to have to challenge them over and then get a result, I'm going to let the membership know, because this is the ultimate. If you've got a United States church envoy passport, stroke diplomatic passport, you can go anywhere you want without digital ID. As far as I can see, there's no digital ID for the church envoy. Can you imagine the Pope going around with digital ID? I can't. So that's the ultimate. Can you imagine diplomats for a nation having to put digital ID into their passport? No. You see, the elites have always left the door open for themselves. And that's what I hope to bring. We can't offer it now because I don't know what the barriers might be. But as soon as I've figured it out, and we will be offering it for sure.
Now, timescales. So I've had a lot of messages about timescale and speed, because someone, said, look, the thing is they are rolling this out very, very fast. And I'm already experiencing bank accounts being monitored. What can you say about the speed for us using your protocols to ensure we are absolutely ahead of the game?
Well, we're geared up to do this. We've set up thousands of trusts already. That's everyone is doing bank payment recoupments already. Mortgage security recoupment, the mortgage redemption. We set thousands of trusts up. We can set up, we've got a pathway to do that. We've got all the trust documents. We've got a banking relationship that you can use for the trust banking. There will obviously be some nuances if you want to transfer your business into the trust and things of this type. But I can do other webinars on that going forward. So yeah, getting the asset shelter protocol, the envoy protocol, pretty quick. We're already geared up for that. Obviously, we're doing infinite money already. We're doing mortgage redemption. We're doing everything on this list. We're already doing it. So, I think the pathway is the envoy protocol, the asset shelter, infinite money at the very minimum level. If it's me, if I can cash flow it, because it is just a cash flow exercise, you cash flow the onboarding of these protocols, and then you recoup it all. And if you're doing the mortgage liberation, well, factor into your cash flow that you're actually redeeming the mortgage. You're actually discharging the mortgage within the first month, so you don't have to pay the mortgage. So imagine a world without a mortgage payment if you've got a mortgage. So the funding required to get all these protocols off the ground can be offset to a large extent against mortgage installments that you don't need to pay anymore. And then, of course, you recoup it all anyway, because you're going to be funding the protocols from a bank account, no doubt, and then you recoup that next year. So it's only a cash flow exercise rather than a cost. Timings, you can get all these protocols set up pretty quickly, but it's weeks, not months. You have all the protocols set up. The recoupment of bank payments, I know everybody wants to know about this, and I'm doing a webinar tomorrow. So if you know what I'm talking about, there's a webinar tomorrow. I'll be answering all those questions that you've got about that tomorrow. I'm not going to answer them all today because I want you to come tomorrow because there's a lot more to talk about. The longest time in this whole program is the recoupment of the credit, which depending on the time of year that you start, it's about 6 months to recoup mortgages and bank payments. Once you've started doing it, then there should be a repeating cycle. Everything else is weeks to set it up. It's not months, it's weeks. The asset shelter, the Envoy protocol, all of that stuff can be done within the first couple of months after you get started. The recoupment stuff, yeah, you might have to wait for that into 2026. But once you started getting those recoupments in, that's when you could, really prosper, under all the protocols working together.
Lovely, thank you. Now, can anybody in all countries actually do these protocols? Because I've got people here from the USA, Canada, so a very good morning to you guys, depending if you're East Coast or West Coast. So I know it's very early, so thank you for taking time out today for joining up. Of course, over to UK, Europe, and all the way down under in Australia and New Zealand. So very late good evening to you guys as well. So can you just clarify that, please?
Yeah, the International Trust operates anywhere. It literally operates anywhere. The banking is inside the trust, so that operates just about anywhere. I don't know of anywhere it wouldn't operate, and you can do this everywhere. The church ministry, the Republic of Old Souls, it's called a 508c1a church. It's registered, but not controlled, registered to the United States, incorporated as an exempt church ministry. So that's what you'd be an envoy for. You can be an envoy all over the world. You can be anywhere in any country and be an envoy. Remember, an envoy is a living man, woman. It's not the body corporate. So you don't worry about which country that the body corporate's registered to. The living man, living woman is international. Doesn't have a registered home as such. It's international. It's not even of this world, if you want to get really deep, because it's consciousness.
Lots of questions about children. How do we protect our children? And also I've got one here said, would every member of my family, including my children, need to all individually be registered, or can each one of us be registered collectively under one trust? So again, a lot of things about protecting children, because I know in the UK they were saying that I've seen on what people have been talking about this, for example, on Instagram and TikTok about this. They are looking for children from 13 and onwards to be registered as well.
Yeah, I mean, see, the registration thing is a problem, because they are going to want to register the body corporate, but basically they've already got it registered. That's the problem. It's already been registered, and this is just a layer on top of what's already happened before with the birth certificate registration itself. For me, the control, you see, their leverage is commerce. They say, if you don't have this idea, we're not going to let you play on that Monopoly board. Now, I don't know how many 13-year-olds are playing Monopoly. Maybe they are. Maybe they've got something going on that's a bit unusual. But to me, it's when you get to 18, 21, that's when you need to put all these protocols in place. a miner, I don't think needs them really. Give me an example of where a miner would need, an international trust. I can't see one unless they're somehow running a business and they're some genius and they're running a business at 15 or 14 or 13, which does happen. Then they could, yeah. But, generally speaking, they're being looked after by mum and dad. So, unless I'm wrong, you give me an example and I'll explain it. There's another question about that.
Lovely, thank you. Someone asked about sending their recoupment money from the trust to a national bank account, and if they could potentially freeze that. They were asking.
But banks can do what they want. They're pirates, right? So they're basically you've got to be careful which bank you're operating with. The international trust, the banks that offer trust accounts, are generally the private banks and the banks that the elites use. So they are unlikely to freeze your funds. Now, there's something I haven't presented today, which because I chose not to, because it's not really necessary. Unless you are a really big hitter, then you can run, or you can actually be a church auxiliary, and you can have a 508c1a church auxiliary, and that's another level up. Most people never need that because they don't need to use that type of entity. The international trust, the international 98 series grant or trust should be sufficient for the vast majority. And banking, private banks typically operate trust accounts. You've also got platforms like Kinesis Money that operate trust accounts. And I don't see any reason why they're going to freeze people's accounts. You don't have to comply with the ID, so they're not going to be freezing the account for that reason. It doesn't apply. So, but I can't sit here and say no bank anywhere in the world is going to freeze your bank account because they're pirates, right? We all know that. More than one bank account, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm just mindful of time. It's now 10 minutes past 12. I know there are some links. So everyone who will be attending today's webinar, if we go to webinar, there are some URLs that we're going to send out. Now, I have seen a couple of questions that come through with regards to handouts, because I think a lot of you are watching or listening to us through the mobile. And maybe you are on a desktop or laptop, but having difficulties in downloading the handouts. As I said, as per the introduction, I've got you. I've got your back. I will make sure they are all emailed out to you ASAP. Okay, so they will be emailed out to you. What we're going to do, Ian, I will keep an eye if any more questions all come through. One did say about, you mentioned about a webinar tomorrow. You would have been sent an email this week. The link is on there. Okay, so please go back into your inbox or your spam folder, check that. There was an update and the webinar link is on that. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to freeze this screen because we wanted to share a couple of things, didn't we, Ian, today? Yeah. So let me just go and get the details. So let me, okay, give it a moment. There we go. Are you going to say something more?
Well, this is our, what we're doing. Last weekend, I did a webinar for Remedy for Farmers. It went down really well, and I've had some very positive meetings during the week with leaders in the farming community who love what we're offering. This is probably bigger than the farmer problem because it affects just about everybody. So yeah, this is our flagship website. If you're an advocate, you want to talk about that, Sims? Because I know a lot of people are talking about how do they get involved in these problem and solution programs that we're running.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've just mentioned about the Great Farmers webinar that we did last week. Links for that for advocates are nearly 99.9% ready. I've actually, whilst we're on here, I had a notification. So I've got to do some testing, because there's no way I'm going to send a link out to an advocate if those links don't work, because it doesn't make sense, right, guys? So I know there was huge demand for this last week, so we just got to do some testing. And then once they become available, I will be emailing all the advocates to say, if you want a particular advocate link for the Great Farmers Defence, we will get that sent to you. Now, no digital ID. As I said earlier this morning, we had so many people, there's been huge demand for this particular topic. I'm sure you want to share this out to your friends, to your family, to your network. Those advocate links will be coming very soon. Again, I will let you know when they are, because, of course, if you share the link now, just the URL, and you send it to someone and they go, yeah, absolutely love this, I'm interested, because, hey, I don't want this, right? And they register, of course, they won't be registered under you as an advocate. And I don't want that for you. So good news, the Great Farmers Defence advocate links are 99.9% done. I've got to do some testing, got to make sure they work. But then, we've got the website up, and I know our tech guys are working very hard today on a Saturday, and they're trying to get this all sorted for you guys. So I will let you know, but I wanted to share that really good news, because I know I had so many emails this week going, when's it ready? I know farmers. And now I know I had a couple of questions coming through going, when can I share this to my friends and family? Because they want to know about this as well. So just wanted to share some good news with you on that one. Thank you so much. And then I think the next one was the Great Escape Protocol as well. So just sharing that. And there was some other sites, the Disruptor as well. So we've got all the links here. In fact, shall I show all the links? You bear with me a moment?
I mean, whilst you're finding those, I mean, this one is explains the protocols. There's some short videos. So, it's a lot to take in, and a lot of people like to watch the videos without reading the ebooks and things. So this site here, I think, is going to be very, very popular. We've only just put it together, so it's all the protocols in one place. And you can play, I think they're about 3 to 5 minute videos on each protocol. So if you want to refresh yourself or become familiar with what each protocol does, how it does it, it's on this website here. This is also probably going to be a good tool if you're an advocate, if you're talking to other people about what we're offering. This is going to be a good one for them to have a look at. Very quick, high level review of what the protocols do and how they do them. And then for those, and this probably isn't as important, but the Disruptor documentary is now ready to watch. It's taken a little bit of time to organize it all. There's 11 chapters. So if you're interested in how did I get here, why am I doing all this, what's my battle with the crown all about, you can see that in this documentary here, which I had some feedback from an interviewer a few days ago. He said, wow, I don't know how you're not completely grey with all those things that went on in the past. So you might want to watch this. It's an interesting story. I think you'll understand why I'm doing what I'm doing if you play these videos. So all there, pretty well done. I'm quite pleased with it, and it may, if it gets enough views. We had interest from Netflix. They said if you get enough people watching this, we'll make it into a Netflix. So that's pretty interesting. I think the story deserves it. I think a lot of people would be interested in the story. And then you've got the next one, which is Entrapment by Design. For those people who want to know, and this is quite relevant, because you see, if you don't operate with digital ID and you start doing things that the Crown don't like, you could end up with what they tried to do with me. For those of you who know the story, You know, they create a fake prosecutor, Alistair Mackenzie. This is from the FCA. They then cook up some bullshit that I might need to operate under a license from them, which they already know I didn't need to operate under a license. They get a court order that you have to that constrains everything you do on the Monopoly Board, and then they're waiting for you to breach that court order so they can get a custodial sentence against the body corporate to put you in jail for breaching an order that should never have been granted in the first place, where there's a fake prosecutor who doesn't exist. So that's what that story is about, and it breaks it down into the different chapters, entrapment by design. And if the FCA and the Crown can do that to me, they probably won't want to do it to you because you may not have my backstory, but you can see how rigged this all is. If you watch this documentary here, you're gonna get a pretty good flavour of what they do to entrap the body corporate and then send the living man to jail as the agent for the body corporate. That's what they try to do with me. It didn't succeed. That's why I'm sitting here presenting this webinar. So all those people out there who are running around saying, oh, Ian's this, that, and the other, he's been convicted, blah, 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 blah. Ian the man was never convicted of anything. Ian the man's as free today as he's always been. And Ian the man knows how the Monopoly Board works, which is why I'm sitting here presenting this webinar when the Crown were desperate to get Ian the man in high security prison because he knows a bit too much about how the game of Monopoly works. That's what entrapment by design is telling you about. It's telling you how they tried to trap me, how I escaped their trap, how you could escape their trap if it ever happens to you. It's pretty interesting, I think, along with the disruptor.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Great comments coming in. Everybody has thoroughly enjoyed today's webinar. Really do appreciate and all that. So yeah, and yeah, people have already telling me they've been watching the disruptor. Thoroughly enjoyed that as well. So well done. You know, and saying you're still here, you're keeping going. So that's really good. So yeah, but again, thank you everybody for your time. Really do appreciate all this. And just again, because I think some other comments are coming through, advocates, okay, I will inform you when the Great Farmers Defence and the No Digital ID will become available. Just as an FYI, along with our wonderful tech team who work so hard behind the scenes, along with our marketing department, we are redesigning the Advocate and the Advocate Originator platform. So where eventually you will go on, you will see all the Advocate links that will become available for you. So for the No Digital ID, the Great Farmers Defence, the Great Protocols, and other landing pages. Plus, for those who've done their testimonials as well, we're still tweaking all those landing pages. There's lots already been done, lots I've already shared out as well. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. But Ian, before we leave, again, thank you everybody who's attending today. Really do appreciate, especially those overseas. I know it's extremely early for you guys, or very, very late. So thank you on that. And of course, again, Ian, thank you for taking the time out as well for today's